So this is
that
pretty cool, man. I'm glad that you're doing this.
yeah, no, it's fun. It's a good excuse for me to talk to people like you. And I mean, you and I have had many interactions, obviously on LinkedIn, and I saw you one time at I think it was Modex, the last Modex, like very briefly. Um,
Yeah,
so this will
I
be our
think so.
longest conversation already. So at
For
least not over
sure,
the
man.
phone.
Yeah, exactly.
So no, it's
So
been fun. It's been fun to, I think we've recorded probably 10 or 11.
are you getting a lot of people within the industry and because I see some variety too. Like I just saw that you had wirecrafters, so it's
Yep.
pretty cool that you're able to touch in different little avenues there.
Yeah, a lot of different types of people, but all within the same, the
Yeah.
same
And what
industry.
about installers? Am I one of the
You're the first,
first ones?
man. You're the
All
first one.
right.
You're the first one.
There we
So
go.
no, I
That's pretty
got
cool.
let me do something here. I gotta make sure I got my notes for you. Um I thought about having some like official introduction, but honestly it's too much pressure. Too much pressure on me to and too much pressure on the guest. So we're just gonna have it be a normal
Yeah,
conversation.
yeah. No, you start reading out my credentials, you'll be there all day.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
No,
Um
I'm just kidding.
Yeah, no, that's what I want to talk about. So I guess how we've started a lot of these is just your journey into the industry. I mean, I know the answer, but for people that don't, or I at least have an idea of what the answer is. Um,
Yeah.
but I guess let everybody know how you got into the industry because we all found our way here uh, in a different way.
Yeah, it's true. We all kind of do find it's a weird industry, right? Like it's very niche. It's not something that people it's not like a plumber or an electrician, where it's so common. It's actually a very niche industry. And so whenever I hear like when I see people coming into the industry, I would almost want to say it's generational. Like a lot of people come in because it was generational, which was my case. So I basically came in, I've been doing this since I was a little kid because my dad was in the industry. His dad did a bunch of like school lockers and stuff like that. Then my uncle had his own company for a while. Then he joined my dad's company. And so it's just always been within my family. And so, I was like really young, sophomore in high school, doing, going on spring break and summer vacations, even middle school, man. I would be there in middle school, like during breaks and, at least maybe creating anchors and stuff like that, having me ride on this forklift. So there was just a lot of, you know, um, I guess you could say times where I was just forced into this. And so once I graduated high school, is when I became more full time with my dad. And so he was in the industry for over 40 years. The install company in itself has been around now for about 25 years. And so, yeah, man, as soon as I graduated, I started, but I was kind of like a laborer, like to get more into detail of my story. I was
Yep.
kind of just a laborer. I was just doing what I had to do, making my money and cashing my check, and that was it. Then I didn't want to do this anymore because I'm like, dude, I am not a laborer. Like, this is not what I want to do for my life. Like, so I started kind of like really resisting a lot. And so I ended up trying to go do my own thing. And so for quite some time, I was trying to figure it out and I was working elsewhere. And then unfortunately, we had gotten a report about my dad being sick. And so once that report came in and I was struggling so much financially, it kind of almost just made sense. One day the light bulb went off and I said, you know what, let me join my dad's company again. But this time not as a laborer, but as a partner. And so I created a whole presentation for him. I sat him down and I spoke to him and I said, listen, this is what I would love to do. I would love to retire you, keep the business running so you can relax. If you're doing your therapy, your treatments and stuff like that, you know that the business is in good hands. Honestly, the business would have failed if I never stepped in. And honestly, I don't know where I would be today if I did it. Um, and so about 6 months after I had rejoined my dad's company, I was, running all the project management, everything in the front end. And then unfortunately my dad had passed. So then once that had happened, I basically forcefully had to take in, and And so I knew nothing on the back end. I'm talking about I didn't know how to quote. I didn't know how much per upright. I didn't know how much per
Yep.
beam. I didn't know how much per wire deck. I'm going, and everything was in his mind, right?
Yeah.
So it's not like how I have it, where everything's in Excel sheets, and if
Yep.
God forbid something happens to me, somebody could as easily go into my computer and see how I price things. Well, with him, that wasn't the case, right? So it was a lot of backtracking, going through his emails. What now takes me 7 to 10 minutes used to take me 3 hours, 2 hours to try to figure out. Um, when I started in the industry, and I uh, really just taking it by the horns and taking over for my dad, we had about 2 employees, 3 employees, maybe max. And so we've grown significantly since then. And we got about 20 guys now that work in our team full time. And we keep them busy, I would say 90, 100% of the time of the year. And
Yep.
we've grown in every single aspect, and it's been quite the journey since.
Yeah. No, it's a good time to do what we do for sure. When you were going, through that unfortunate situation where you're trying to figure this out on the fly, was there anyone that you could lean on to figure that out? Or was it, like you said, was it, literally going back to emails, back probably years trying to figure out how to cost these
Yeah,
jobs?
the thing is that, so he didn't have social media. I didn't have any connections. He did business mainly with 2 to 3 companies, max
Hmm.
2 to 3
Yep.
people where he
Yeah.
worked with. And then, like, I didn't want to expose myself neither, that I didn't know what I was doing. And I also didn't know who I could trust, because let's say, I'm doing installs for you, and I say, well, Jake, how much do I charge for this? Well, that can easily take advantage of me and say, oh, $100, and
Right.
it really should cost 250,
Right.
right? So I didn't know who I can trust, and I didn't know who I can contact. So I really didn't have anybody there.
Yeah.
I did ask around here and there, and through trial and error is how I really figured it out.
Yep.
Um, but I really didn't have any help at that time.
Yeah. No. What about now? Is there anyone that you can lean on now? I've found, even, with our, install company, and we've worked with you guys as well. It's just like there is more people willing to help than I thought, and just
Yeah,
having conversations and, having a group of other installation companies talk. I mean, it's not kumbaya meetings and but it's like if someone calls and asks for help or has a question, like anytime I've done it, I've always gotten a great response.
I think so. I think people are willing to help each other out. I always say this one thing. I always say that we're stronger united, not divided.
Yep.
And a lot of times we think that just because you're another installer, I got to keep my distance. You're my competitor. Um, and the truth is that there's plenty of work to go around. The truth is, I don't want to travel to California anyways to do an installation.
Right.
So why am I
Yeah.
not going to just call you?
Yep.
I mean, the US is too big to cover. A lot of times installers are like, oh, yeah, we cover all 50 states, and yeah, you could, right? But it just
Yep.
really doesn't make sense. I focus on a general region. We do a lot of the Southeast. I'm based in Miami. So, of course, all of Florida and the Carolinas and Georgia and stuff like that. But anything beyond that, it's almost like, man, if it makes sense financially for the end
Right.
user, for myself, for you, then of course I'll do it, right? But
Yep.
I think that it's a lot more effective for every party involved when you unite.
Yep.
And so I've been able to do that with a couple of installers, or some people that like you said, is there somebody that I can lean on? Like, I can't think of a person right now that is an install company. They're very big, and he has a ton of wisdom. He's been around for years and years. And if I really am just like, dude, I have no idea how to price this out, I can give him a call and he'll give me a 1 hour speech of
Yep.
how and why, and it became natural. Like, it was such a natural connection. Um, so I'm actually really grateful for people like that.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. One of the questions I had, which is twofold, because now I get to see it from both sides, being on the install side and also on the sales side. How can talking to salespeople here? So your audience is the I guess your customers in a way. How can salespeople make it easier for installation companies on the upfront? So an example for me would be, instead of sending 4 PDF quotes from the manufacturer, send over a summary with the scope of work, drawings, and then the proposals are also nice. But instead of having, for you to sift through 4 PDFs, try to figure out what the bill of materials is, what
Yeah,
that is.
yeah.
So I guess what tips do you have on that? Because I'm sure there's quite a few, and I think there's just a lot that goes unnoticed from the salesperson to the installation company.
I think more the merrier. As
Yep.
much info you have, the better, right? Every manufacturer is different, right? So you could be doing a pushback system. Or I just did a drive-in system not too long ago where even though I've done that manufacturer before, that system is different than the one that I did prior to that because it was structural versus teardrop, right? Like, and so sometimes the description could be very vague, and I don't know if it's just that people assume, hey, maybe we know, or they're trying to be slick, right? Like, oh no, it's easy, and when
Yeah.
you get there, you're like, oh my god, what is this? Um, but I think more the merrier, right? Like the more information, just the manufacturer, if possible. I know sometimes you're in the quoting process, right? So you don't know exactly what manufacturer you're going to use yet. Um, yeah, the drawings that helps. The elevations help a lot because that really determines, it gives you an idea of what levels you're going to be working at the most. If there's anything on the ground, if there's nothing on the ground, um, and then a good point or two is how many anchors per upright. Sometimes it requires 8. Sometimes these things are getting crazy, man. It's
I
like
know.
before it used to be one per foot plate. Now it's 4 per foot plate, and you're like, dude, so that requires a lot more time and effort. Um, and I think also above all, because normally most people send me as much info as possible, and it works out for the most part. I think where people could really improve in is what are the site conditions?
Yep.
That's usually
Yep.
where I get my biggest issues, right? There was no ramp on site. Now we got to get a second forklift. Nobody told me there was no ramp. The area was not free and
Not
clear.
free and
There's a
clear.
ton of
Yep.
product sitting in there, or we got to do this in phases, and so they're gonna move the material while you're working and then load it up behind you. And so there's just like a lot of times when we don't know the site conditions. The floor wasn't ready. It's not sealed. So when you run into all of those, I would it's so much better to know beforehand.
Yeah. I think pictures always help too. I think
Oh my
pictures,
God. Yeah.
because even if that person's new to the industry, I mean, they can, whatever they see with their eyes and what they want to share with you is going to be different than when you see it, right? So
Yeah.
more pictures, the better. Pictures, videos, especially, if you're unsure that the site is free and clear. I mean, that's obviously one of the main things that we can control. The one thing we can is when materials don't show up on time. That's one thing that I
Yeah.
don't know how we can fix that one.
You know what I
Um,
do sometimes too is I tried doing it. Not everybody responds to it though, but I usually send out a questionnaire, and that questionnaire asks: is there a ramp on site? Is it just dock doors? Are there other contractors on site? Like other things, like just stuff that we could ask and get before. Is there lights in the building? Is there
yeah.
electricity in
Is
the
there
building?
heat in the building? Is there?
Well, in my case, that's usually not. If there's heat
Yeah.
in the building, we're in trouble.
Yeah, if there's heat, yeah, for us it's different.
I'm gonna freaking die in there.
Yeah, it's 17 degrees here right now. So
Oh man,
I
no.
know
So
it's not by
over
you.
here we're does it say here on my computer? No, over here we're 80 degrees in February.
Yeah,
So
we
we're
need more projects down by you guys.
yeah, amen
No,
to
I
that.
and even the details, right? Because as a salesperson, you see it on the quote. You could have a whatever $400,000 or $500,000 project, and then you see the anchors. You see the anchors cost $2 a piece. So you just automatically think, like in your head, like that's not a big deal. That takes a lot of time. 2 anchors versus 8 per,
Well,
or
yeah,
4 per.
I've gotten burned a few times with that.
Yeah,
And then so sometimes with me is I'm not the type of person to really I hate penny pinching.
yeah,
So I don't send a lot of change orders. It has to
yeah,
be drastic. And
yeah,
so sometimes I just bite my tongue and I just like I think more relationship, more long term versus trying to get rich on one project.
yeah,
And so it's like, but sometimes, man, yeah, those 8 anchors will kill somebody, man. It's tough.
yeah. It can add days, days to the project.
Yeah, yeah,
For
bids and
sure.
all of that too.
What staying on kind of the same topic of what are some common mistakes that you see salespeople or solution engineers make that, I mean, I think a lot of times if you have a good installation crew like your company, like you guys can fix some of the problems on site where the customer doesn't need to, be made aware of it because it is a fixable thing. But what are some common things that you guys see maybe salespeople mess up on where, maybe if we would have focused on a little more detail up front, what could have avoided that?
I think some of the most common things I see is, which is sometimes not the salesperson's fault though, is logistics, right? The timing of these trucks coming in, they say 8, they get there at 12. Um, and so sometimes measurements, I think sometimes they just go based off of, whatever measurements that were sent into them. They don't actually go and field measure.
Yep.
That's why it's really important, to work off columns and not just walls,
Yep.
or from the last row of rack. I think it's really important to just really work off those columns because the columns are most likely going to be right. You can't mess that up.
Yep.
Um, but yeah, those are some of the things that I think maybe more boots on the ground. The thing is that it's very the industry is very national, right? So we get a lot of customer. A lot of my customers are based in maybe California, for example. So that's a extremely long flight to go over there and to do field measurements. So I understand the reason why a lot of times people just avoid going over there. It's just a lot of work to do all those field measurements. But maybe, that's when you can utilize the connections that you have. For example, if you have a project going on in Miami, you need measurements. Well, you can call me and we can actually try to work something out
Right.
where we can do the measurements for you and then, confirm it. Um, but I think those are, some of the biggest things. One of the things that I like that you said is not including the customer in this stuff. And I really pride myself in that. I train my team. Do not speak to the customer. I don't care if they're asking 100 questions. I don't care if the rack is completely wrong. Like there was not too long ago, I went to go stand with the very first upright, and the first upright hit the trusses on the ceiling, and I'm like, oh my god, all these racks are completely wrong,
Yeah.
and that's a big issue. But you can't run to the customer and say, hey, all the rack is wrong. No, man,
Yeah.
you got to call the salesperson and have him work it out and to bandage it up as most as possible.
Yeah. No, that's a sign of a experienced installation company, when you don't have the lead on site, running to the customer asking questions because then you're getting the call as a salesperson, if you're not there and there's not many worse calls to get than one of those when it's like, maybe it's something that could have been fixed and it did not need to be made into a huge deal.
Yeah, yeah, for
Um,
sure.
what are you get to deal with a lot of different types, whether it's people that are just in the industry or, people who have been doing it for 30, 40 years that obviously could do it in their sleep. What are the common traits or I guess skill sets of the elite salespeople or elite project managers out there that you get to work with? Because you get to see it all. I mean, you get to see all types.
Yeah. Yeah, you see different ones, sometimes the ones that have been there longer is a little bit more old school. I would say that our industry is a little more old school than it is, people that are, I guess, my age and your age.
Yep.
You do see a lot of people that have been there for 30 years, 40 years. And so you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? And their way works. It does, but there is a little bit of an evolution side to this. I remember when I first started doing installs, we climbed all the racks. We didn't use scissor lifts, so I would be 20, 30 feet up in the air, walking beams with no wire deck, just walking across the beam. And I've paid the price before. I had something swing, hit me right in the mouth. My tooth came out and I fell. And so I'll never forget that day, man. And so when I took over, I saw that my dad was a little old school. I'm like, hey, we can't be just climbing racks like this. No, don't worry about it. No, it's more money if you get. I'm like, yeah, I understand that it's more money, but think about the insurance claim that we're about to have, or the lawsuit that could potentially happen, or they won't contract you.
Right.
Yeah, add the $2,500 in rentals because they're not going to contract you without it. Nobody wants people walking racks anymore.
Yep.
Um, So it's the evolution of of the industry, and so but there's some great people out there, man. There's some smart people out there. I've seen certain companies that started from nothing, and now they're worth millions, and they got tons of they're huge distributors and dealers, and you get to see a lot of different personalities and different methods, and it's great because you can learn so much. You take a little bit here, you take a little bit there, and you can really
Yeah,
get yourself seasoned in what you're doing. And so, yeah, I think the evolution is definitely it's happening though. You're seeing more and more younger people coming in.
for sure. I mean, would you say the people that you get the largest projects with, and the ones that go the smoothest, are the ones that are sending over the most details, and don't feel like they're rushing you? I think that's one thing that's easy to do, is get caught up with all these projects that we have going on, and then you kind of feel the pressure from the customer,
Yeah,
and you get a couple of these going at one time, and I feel like the guys, and not just the guys, obviously, anyone that does what we do, um, the successful ones, I feel like, can kind of slow down time, and they don't feel rushed or stressed. It's
yeah.
kind of, you feel the same way with that.
Yeah, yeah. There's been moments where I need this done. We need this done. The due date is Friday, and then you start, okay, and then but then you compromise quality a little bit.
Yep.
So then that's where mistakes could happen, or you got one anchor like this and one like this because
Yep.
the guy is trying to fly through it, and so definitely you don't want to compromise. There's nothing's worth compromising the quality.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that I try my hardest to do is maintaining quality control. And but that happens when you're in expansion mode. When
Yep.
you're in expansion mode, it's hard to contain that or
Yep.
sustain that quality control. And so um, yeah, I think that lead times lead times got crazy there for a second.
Hmm.
It's calmed down a little bit now, but lead times were pretty wild, and people were waiting. These end users were waiting so long for their racks that by the time it got into the building, yo, I need this done tomorrow.
Yep.
So, and I understand too some of the pressure because these people are paying rent or they're leasing these warehouses, and their bill is $1 million a month or $500,000 a month, and so yeah, they don't want to waste another 500,000 not being able to move into that facility yet. So
Right. Right. Yeah, you brought up a good point too, of just a lot of times, we have a project going on, and we're sending over a quote, and I hope that we aren't doing it. I know like our team, we're aware of it, but it's like, you send over a quote request, what's a realistic time frame to get that back? Because I would imagine it is extremely annoying if you have one person, every time they send over a quote request, it's marked urgent. They need it back as soon as possible.
yeah,
I mean, that gets tiring. So I try to never do it unless it's something where maybe I dropped the ball and I really did mess up and I do need it back as soon as possible. But I try to never do that, because I've been in similar shoes where I get those quote requests coming in. I'm like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean you need this back in an hour?
yeah. Why is everything urgent?
Yeah.
Yeah, man. It's like crying wolf almost at some point. It's like,
Yep.
I can think of somebody right off the top of my head that
Yep.
every single request says
Same.
urgent on it. So then I tend to not pay attention to it. So,
Yeah.
but I think that, so we're as good as our team. And in the last year, what I've done, pretty well is I've been able to build a really good team, and not just on the front end, but I also have people that work on the administrative side. I have people now that I use a whole CRM. I have everything integrated. The moment I receive a request, I don't even touch it. To be honest with you, I have an assistant that does it. The moment that it hits my inbox, she or one of the people work on that quote. They send it to me to approve it. And so usually now, because it did used to take me a long time, I used to get a little backed up on quotes, and it would take me
Yep.
3 days to get to something, which
Yep.
is not fair to you. So, and I've lost projects because of that. By the time I sent it in, no, don't worry, we already awarded it out. You're like, damn. So, I think that you've got to have the right systems and process in place. And so we've done a good job at now being able to turn quotes in same day, I would say. I'm not backed up on any quotes right now, and I haven't been in quite some time. And so now, within 24 hours, within an hour, 2 hours, normally a quote will come in.
Yep.
But if not, at least 24 hours.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where we're at. I think we're between 24 and 48, depending on the complexity, the
Right. If it's
complexity
complex,
of
it
it.
does take longer for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. No, if you, oh, one of the things that, I mean, I think you just answered the question, but just managing the chaos of running an installation company, having a CRM system, having, someone there to help you with some of the administrative things. But what else are you doing to manage the chaos of it? Because I don't think most people understand how every day is truly different. Whatever your calendar and your schedule says a month from now,
It changes.
0% chance of that happening exactly the way it's going to happen. So
Yeah.
I guess both mentally and like tangible ways that you stay sane while managing the schedule of an installation company.
Yeah, I would say day by day is how we have to handle it. You got to have the right people in place. I think that some of the biggest mistakes that people make, not just as an installer, but just in business in general, is that people try to cut costs by doing everything themselves. And so I'm not a type of person to cut costs like that. To me, I think it's so much more productive. It's so much more efficient to be able to just hire somebody that could do that for you. So I could focus on whatever fire is going on, whatever hiccup we have in our schedule, or focusing on customer relationship, or being able to do something like this. Imagine I was out on a job site right now. We,
Right.
we got three of them going on at the moment, but imagine I had to be at one of them, like I wouldn't even be able to be doing this.
Right.
And so I think that some of the biggest mistakes that people make, especially on installers, because I see a lot of installers doing this, is that they're the ones quoting, they're the ones installing, they're the ones coordinating, they're the one that is invoicing and you know taking the check to the bank to deposit it. I mean, they're doing it all.
Yep.
And I used to say, how the hell does my dad? How did my dad do this? Because he was that type that would be on site every single day. I'm like, how did this guy do it? I couldn't understand like
Yeah.
how he was able to send quotes and be on jobs and do all of this stuff all at the same time. It just didn't make sense. I mean, we're running a way bigger team now, so I could see, maybe doing it with your three-man crew. Um, but you can't do it all on your own, man. You need to loosen the purse strings a little, hire
Yeah.
somebody, and in the long run, you will see it come back.
Yeah, be willing to yeah, kind of take some things off your plate, which is not easy to
Yeah,
do. It's not easy
it's
to do.
hard. It's super hard.
Yeah, which I mean I know it takes time
I have
and
a really hard time delegating. So
yeah,
that was one of my biggest issues in the beginning, is that I didn't want to let go of certain things.
yeah,
No, 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 no. I'm going to do all the quoting. No, no, I'll send the invoice. No, it's just faster for me to do it anyways.
yeah,
But I learned that, okay, take the 5 minutes extra, teach this person how to do it. The next time it comes around, I don't have to do it. So there.
yeah.
So, but it's
No, it is
hard.
hard.
It's a lot
Eh,
easier said than done.
Yeah, no, it is hard. I never, before starting 2-3, I never was in a position where I had, managed or led any person before. So I had no idea what that was like. I kind of saw what not to do in a lot of cases, but it
Right.
was yeah, it was always weird, like asking, like, "Hey, would you like?" You kind of like hesitant to ask, like, "Would you mind doing X, Y, Z?" And it's like, no, that's what you brought them in to do.
Yeah,
That's what
yeah,
you're
it's
paying them to
true.
do. So, um,
I'm not a very bossy person, so
yeah,
struggled with that also.
yeah, I would like to think I'm a similar way.
Yeah.
Um, if you were to start over today with all the knowledge that you have, what would you do different? What do you think you've learned the most from the last how many years? It was 14 I saw on LinkedIn.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I already graduated high school, yeah, 14 years ago, man.
Yeah.
So it's been quite some time. And then the years of experience before that. And, um, man, I think that, I don't know, man, that's a good question. What have I learned the most? I think something that really sticks out to me is being able to adapt in certain times and seasons, and different markets and economies, and being able to adapt. I think not being rigid in your mindset is one thing. Also, I noticed that you know, we didn't grow a lot in the past because we were stuck in one way of doing things, or all the eggs were in one basket, or in other words, in one customer, right? 99%, 95% of the business that I do today was relationships that I built, not,
Yep.
it wasn't my dad's past clientele. As a matter of fact, I can't think of anybody that we worked with in the past that we're working with now. And it's also knowing that relationship goes further than a dollar amount.
Yep.
I think that we tend to look at everything as a dollar amount and not as a relationship. And one of my greatest strengths has been relationship building. And I think it's super key to know that relationships take time to build, and trust takes time. Like, I sent somebody a text message yesterday. He owns a really big company in the material handling industry. And, I remember I went to send him a text. And when I sent him that text, I saw that I had a bunch of blue bubbles. It was a bunch of blue bubbles, because I got an iPhone. And so I scrolled all the way up, and it was all the way dating back from 2022 is when I first got in contact with this person. And it was a lot of, hey, happy birthdays, hey, happy Father's Day, hey, happy Thanksgiving, but no reply. Um, but I was persistent in my relationship, and I kept trying and I kept trying. And finally, one day, his team called me. Hey, we want to put you on a project. Let's start working together. We're growing. We have a project coming up in Florida. And because of my persistent and building relationship and not chasing a dollar,
Yep.
I just quoted, it was almost a $500,000 install. And we're getting pretty close into closing it on right now.
That's
So
awesome.
I think that, when I saw that message last night, it stuck with me. I even sent it a screenshot to my friend. I said, bro, this is business.
Yep.
It's constant pursuit of relationship, because it takes time, man. That was almost 3 years in the making.
Yeah. That's an awesome story. Yeah. Well, I hope you get it. That would be, I mean,
Yeah,
that would be the icing on the cake.
yeah, that would help for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
at least there's talks now.
Yeah.
Whether we get the project or not, at least we know that the relationship is forming, and
Right.
all that work that we did wasn't in vain.
Yeah. You have the opportunity. And I think, one of the things you said, it takes time. Relationships take time. I think if you think back on the strongest relationships that you have with customers, I would guess that a lot of those are the ones where you went through some things on the project, and it
Yeah,
wasn't perfect. And I've talked about this before with almost everyone that's come on, where it's like the strongest relationships that we have with customers are the ones where kind of shit hit the fan, or something didn't go as planned. And, you stayed there, you didn't leave, you didn't run, you didn't point fingers. I'm assuming it's the same for you guys.
man. Right away I think of a case where one time I was doing a project in South Carolina. It was Georgia bordering South Carolina, one of those. And I had a team over there, and the team just basically almost fell apart, man. And it- I got a phone call from my customer. I respect this guy a lot. And he called me and says, dude, what are we going to do? And I remember I was sitting in my house. I wasn't even over there. I was sitting in my house. And I said, no, you have my word. I'll make sure that this gets done. And within less than 10 hours, I was boarding a plane. I flew all the way over there. I showed up. And then, based off of what I was seeing, I said, you know what? I need more guys over here. And so I flew my team. I lost tons of money on this job. And
Yeah.
he, to this day, still doesn't even know that. But I flew, a couple of guys over there to help me out. And we got the job done. We worked long hours and never raised any hell about it. Didn't raise any red flags. Didn't give anybody a hard time. I just submitted my invoice, like, nothing happened. And um, sometimes that's what it takes,
Yep.
to salvage either your reputation, or, more than anything, man, just making sure that if you're going to give somebody your word, you got to stick to it.
Yep.
So that was probably one of the biggest learning lessons, is that right there.
When I would assume you're still working with him today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
do.
Yep. So no, that's awesome. I can think of several. I mean, I'd like to not have as many, right? But those are the
Yeah.
ones where it's you kind of approach mistakes and you approach the negative things a little differently if you have that mindset rather than, you're so scared to make a mistake. It's like, it's okay if you do,
Yeah,
obviously.
it happens.
Yep, it happens. Learn from it. Try not to have it happen again. But it's just having the customer understand too that yeah, there's something that was not planned happened, and we're fixing it.
Yeah,
So
yeah, and even if that, man, I had to board that plane, dude. I booked the flight same day,
yeah,
and
sure.
it was wild, bro. Renting cars and it was running around. Oh my god, we gotta do, but we made it happen. And that's what it takes, man. That's what will separate you, whether you're
Yeah,
in sales or you're an installer like myself, or any industry, any business that you're in. I mean, it's just really trying to go above and beyond.
yeah, no, for
Not
sure.
being a crybaby.
Yeah, no one. It doesn't matter. Your feelings don't matter, especially in
Yeah,
this industry. like you got to get the job done. So
yeah, man.
no, I appreciate you coming on. I love seeing all your stuff on LinkedIn. I love that you got the company one up and running now with the projects. I've seen a lot more of those. So
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
yeah, keep posting those. Those are always fun to see.
Yeah,
So
before I was doing all the posting myself, and I'm like, dude, But speaking of posting and running company accounts, I would honestly say, I think I told you or I told somebody on your team before. Um, I think that 2-3 is doing an incredible job. You guys having a great marketing um, aesthetic. You guys, I was really impressed. I don't know if it was you that I had told, but
that was maybe
I'll
Kyle.
never
Yeah,
forget that I was like, dude, man, who are these people? Like, and I look at the website, I'm like, damn, this is clean, bro.
yeah,
And then, one day one of my employees was like, yeah, man, I was on TikTok and I saw this company 2-3, and I'm like, TikTok? These people are on TikTok. And so, yeah, I had to give honor to where honor is due, man. And you guys have done a great job. And now with this complementing it, I think you guys are definitely bringing a lot of awareness to the industry and to your guys' personal brand, and you guys are doing a great job at it. And so definitely keep it up, man, because it's going somewhere.
no, I appreciate that. And it's obviously not. It's not me. I mean, it's Ben. Ben's out in Denver. He handles all of our social media, and Hayden. We hired him as a project manager to do nothing with the website and social media. And between those two guys, I mean, they've been absolutely crushing it. And this is
Yeah,
fun.
that's
This
great.
this podcast is fun. It's just like I said when we started, it's just an excuse for me to talk to cool people, and then we post it. And if it's a horrible conversation, then
Yeah,
we'll
that's
probably
great.
just
And then
then
people
we'll
learn
not.
from
Yeah. Yeah. So just trying to do something a little different. So
it.
no, I appreciate you coming
Yeah,
on,
that's
and
cool.
we can stick around after this. I know um we can chat about a few different things too with Modex coming up. So no, I appreciate you coming on, Mike.